Max Verstappen has just hit back at his doubters. The current championship leader has had enough, thus he decided to hit back at anyone that doubted him or made fun of him this season. And it wasn't just the FIA he went after. He also set his sights on other teams in the paddock, who, at times, took aim at Verstappen this season. It seems like the three-time world champion is trying to take the heat off him. Verstappen stated he was perplexed by the stories swirling around Red Bull's supposed usage of asymmetric braking this summer, and he addressed rival Formula One teams attempting to stir up controversy. After a strong start to 2024, Red Bull's fortunes took a turn for the worst during May's Miami Grand Prix, when McLaren introduced a big upgrade package that transformed its MCL38 into a race-winning car, while Red Bull claims it picked the incorrect development route with its RB20. Red Bull failed to adapt to its decline in competitiveness, with its last win going back to Verstappen's victory in June's Spanish Grand Prix, and has only just begun to turn the corner on its car's handling troubles. Speculation about the root of Red Bull's form slump began in the summer, when the FIA revised its limits on asymmetric braking, thereby eliminating a loophole for the 2026 standards and retrospectively applying the new rule to this year's rulebook. The FIA also clarified that the regulation change was not motivated by a current team utilizing a method that the new language prohibited, but this did not stop conjecture that Red Bull had been using a solution that it had to remove from the RB20. Verstappen reminisced on the entire situation, as well as the criticism his World Championship winning team got, with humor. "People always come up with different stuff," he said. "I find it really bizarre how they come up with some of these things. But it is what it is. It's part of the game, but I usually just let it go. I've been in F1 for 10 years now, and I'm not wasting time on all those stories. I mean, I barely read anything about F1 anyway. Of course, sometimes I see something or someone else tells me, 'Did you see what this and that person said?' But I always say people can think what they want. I'm not going to waste my energy on that. So, I don't really care about what other people say." Red Bull was also chastised by other teams for its form slump and off-track power conflicts, prompting McLaren CEO Zak Brown to declare that Red Bull had been destabilized. He later described the squad as a pretty toxic one. "People that say all sorts of stuff should just focus on their own team," Verstappen replied when the subject was brought up. That's nothing specifically against Zak Brown, by the way. It applies to everyone. People just need to focus on themselves, and that's what I'm doing as well. The Red Bull-McLaren rivalry has now spread to the track, with McLaren overtaking Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship and Lando Norris pushing Verstappen for the driver's title, including a collision in Austria. However, the Dutchman does not believe things will get as tight as they were in a tough 2021 title race with Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. "Yes, because right now, we still have 4 teams at the front, while back then, you just had the same 2 people up front," he said. "Of course, 2021 was my first World Championship, so that was very different already. I think I'm a bit more relaxed about it now. Of course, I want to win, and of course, I'm going to do my best to defend that 52-point lead. But the feeling is very different from 2021. If Verstappen wants to keep that advantage, he'll have to hope that the upgrade Red Bull is bringing this weekend will work. If not, they'll have a huge problem, and not just for 2024, but 2025 as well. As Red Bull is considering an update of its existing RB20 model for 2025, feeling that investing in a major redesign is not worthwhile. So, if this weekend's upgrade won't provide big gains, they might be doomed for 2025. With the Milton Keynes-based squad involved in a close title battle with McLaren, it is aware that if it does not make significant advances this winter, it may face a much more challenging campaign next year. However, a mix of cost cap constraints and the necessity to ramp up preparations for the new rules revolution, which will occur in 2026 when Red Bull will operate its own engine, has forced it to refrain from doing anything drastic. When asked how the squad was dealing with the many demands of today, next year, and 2026, team manager Christian Horner said, "In this business, you're always juggling, and you've got to put one foot in front of the other. You can't project too far into the future. Long term, in F1, is about 2.5 months, and, basically, what we learn this year is relevant to next year. So next year's car will be an evolution of this year's car. I mean, there's many components of last year's car that have been carried over into this year, because with the way the cost cap works, unless there's significant performance upgrade, it doesn't make sense to change. Red Bull's resolve not to overstretch itself with car upgrades for next year comes as it prepares to launch its first F1 engine in early 2026. It has spent extensively in its new Red Bull Powertrains subsidiary, which it believes will generate profits despite the high expenditures. It is by far our biggest challenge, added Horner. We've created a startup business, aggressively recruited 600 people into it, built a factory, put in the process, and brought a group of people together to work within a Red Bull culture that has been so successful on the chassis side. Of course, many have come from other teams, competitors, and suppliers in F1. And that's a massive undertaking to get 600 people and all your processes, your supply chain, everything geared up to deliver for 2 teams in 2026. We also have the benefit of a great partner in Ford Motor Company, and that relationship is working very well. But inevitably there will be short-term pain, but there is a long-term gain of having everything under one roof with engineers. We've already seen the benefit and the difference of having chassis and engine engineers sitting essentially next to each other as we start to integrate the 26 engine into the 26 car. As Red Bull delved deeper into the causes that have hampered the growth of its current RB20, issues with wind tunnel correlation have emerged. It comes with the team continuing to operate from the same Bedford facilities it has used since entering Formula One in 2005. While development has begun on a new cutting-edge facility at its Milton Keynes factory, it is unlikely to be operational before 2026. Horner emphasized that Red Bull was always aware that while Bedford has been updated over the years, it is not as technologically advanced as newer facilities. We've always known the limitations of the tunnel, he said, but I think as we've really started to push the aerodynamics of these cars now, and you're into really fine margins, then the limitations show themselves up. He went on to say that committing to invest in its new wind tunnel was only conceivable when it became evident that the concept of prohibiting teams from utilizing such facilities had been dropped. There was a point in time that wind tunnels could have been banned, he said. There was a discussion about whether that was going to be the case, and whether CFD would overtake it or not. Adrian Newey held off pushing for a new tunnel until there was clarity on that, but it got to a point where Aston Martin wanted a new tunnel and the FIA changed their stance. So it was a question of, look, we have to do this, and we have to do this now, because the regulations dictate that within a cost cap, the tunnel that we're running is grossly inefficient. Asked what the challenges Red Bull faced with its Bedford tunnel were, Horner said, "We've got a facility that is a 60-year-old wind tunnel. It is a relic of the Cold War. It's been good enough to produce some fantastic cars for us over the years, but it has its limitations. So anything under 5 degrees centigrade, we can't run it. Anything over 25 degrees, it becomes pretty unstable. And these minor difficulties Red Bull are facing on a day-to-day basis might be the reason the team has been falling off in recent months, don't you think? So, will Verstappen and Red Bull be able to clinch one of the 2 championships this year? And what about next year? Are they doomed with their old wind tunnel and scaled-down upgrade plans? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.